from the heart of rural France. This is the Keto Woman podcast, brought to you by me. Hello Keto Lovelies, I'm Daisy Brackenhall, and I've spent most of my life struggling with my weight and confidence, and have always had a difficult relationship with food. Even when I finally got to my target weight, after weight loss surgery and eating low carb, I couldn't maintain it and I was miserable. I've been keto now for over 2 years, and it has given me the freedom to fall in love with food again, without the constant gain, loss, guilt, virtue cycle of before. Health and happiness is where it's at now, running on fat. Welcome to the Keto Woman podcast. Each week I'll be chatting to inspirational women, maybe even the odd man, to discover the secrets to their success so that I can share them with you. So what is keto? Keto is a way of eating that enables you to switch your body's main fuel source from sugar to fat. Who doesn't want to be a fat burner, right? But how do we achieve this? A great place to start is by keeping carbs under 20 grams a day. So things like leafy greens and above ground vegetables, plus some nuts and seeds and the incidental carbs you find in things like full fat dairy. Choose delicious fatty proteins and be free and easy with oily dressings on salad and butter on your veggies. Once you're in the swing of things, you can tweak it to suit you. Make your own personalized keto. You'll hear all sorts of ways to keto from my guests. There is no one way to do keto, no one size fits all. I hope to show you just how flexible and fabulous this way of eating can be. I'm not a doctor, and most of my guests won't be either, so we really can't give you medical advice. It's always best to consult your own doctor when making big changes to your diet and lifestyle, because they know you and your medical history, and so have access to the bigger picture. Wouldn't it be helpful to have one place where you could find all the links? Want to sign up to my new Patreon exclusive Facebook group, Daisy's Lovelies? No problem. How about subscribing to my YouTube channel? Please help me notch up my first 1,000 subscribers by going to links.ketowomanpodcast.com and following the YouTube link. Not following me on Instagram yet? Hit the Instagram button. You get the idea. All the buttons, all the links you need are at links.ketowomanpodcast.com. Thank you, Zoe Monk, for supporting me and this podcast by making a pledge at my Patreon page. Do you want to hear your name here at the top of the show? Are you enjoying this podcast and would like to help me make more episodes? Then head over to my Patreon page at patreon.com/ketowoman or hit the support button on the Keto Woman podcast website. It means a great deal to me, and you will get to headline the show just like Zoe did today. Thank you for tuning in to episode number 140. This week I'm joined by Maria Emmerich. Maria is a nutritionist who specializes in the ketogenic diet and exercise physiology. She struggled with her health and weight throughout childhood, which led her to become such a passionate nutrition expert. She says, "My goal is to help transform people's lives and start living again." Maria specializes in brain neurotransmitters and how food can increase mental wellness. Her expertise has sent her around the world speaking about ketogenic diets. She spends the majority of her time with clients around the world via Skype with amazing results. She specializes in helping autoimmune disorders, diabetes type 1 and 2, heart disease, cholesterol issues, alopecia, Hashimoto's, cancer, epilepsy, seizures, depression and anxiety. You would be amazed at the number of people who get off medication with her guidance. She is also an international best-selling author of several books, including Quick and Easy Ketogenic Cooking and the 30-Day Ketogenic Cleanse. She also authored 10 other books, including several cookbooks and 3 nutritional guidebooks, including the best-selling book Keto. Some of her readers include Halle Berry, Valerie Bertinelli, and Al Roker. We had a few tech issues this week, but I've edited out the worst of the glitches. There are some very noisy birds in the background, but I rather like it. I'm intrigued by what they might be, so if anybody recognizes them, please do let me know. Welcome, Maria, to the Keto Woman podcast. It's lovely to see you today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me on the podcast, Daisy. You're such a sweetie.
You look like you're sitting in a lovely sunny room.
I am. I am always trying to be outside. So even during a podcast, if I can be outside, I will. Even though it's kind of a little dreary and rainy, I'd rather be outside than inside any day.
I've noticed from a lot of your posts, one's coming to mind where I think you'd been out for a run. I don't know what the temperature was, but freezing cold, and you literally had ice hanging off your face.
I love to run and I love to be outside. I will never run on a treadmill. So even when it's 20 below, I'm out there. I wear scuba socks to keep my toes from freezing, but I still get some cold therapy even with the scuba socks on.
Well, it's very good for you, isn't it, to get cold in that way?
Yeah, it is. I even have I have a bathtub outside here that I fill with ice and do cold baths in there. Yeah, it's really good. It's hard at first, but cold therapy is very therapeutic. I mean, this is why people go to cryotherapy hospitals, you know. I don't want to spend the money going to a hospital and driving there. I'm just going to do it here, you know.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, everyone's got a cold shower for free, right? I mean, you don't have to spend money on these things. But it seems to have, I've heard a lot recently, people are talking about had a bit of a resurgence with Wim Hof and people are talking about all sorts of different ways of using cold therapy treatment in some way.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about cold therapy about 10 years ago in one of my first books, and it seemed to like it's taken off recently for sure. I mean, I don't think I had anything to do with it, but I'm glad people are getting into it because it is really healthy. It's hard at first, but it's invigorating once you try to do it. It really helps with circulation too.
It really does. I've told the story before, but I have a lake fairly near here that I like to go swimming in. And I'm a bit of a wimp. I wait quite a long time at the beginning of the season before I go in so that it's not warm. I don't have to have the water warm. In fact, I don't like it when it's too warm, but not really, really cold. But one year I carried on swimming up until about November, and the temperature kept getting lower and lower and lower. And these people would be walking around the lake, walking their dogs, you know, all wrapped up in their coats and things. And then they'd just be, you know, chatting and looking, and then they'd see this weird, crazy English woman swimming in the middle of the lake. We'd have these conversations. They're like, what are you doing in there? Isn't it freezing cold? And it went down to, I think I measured the temperature, the lowest temperature when I stopped. It was about 8 degrees. I'm not sure how that translates to your scale, but 8 degrees C. So pretty cold. But when you take it down in stages, it's easier, isn't it?
It is. And that's, you know, everything. I think that's how I started keto. It was kind of in stages. It was, what was it? 23 years ago now. You know, starting this diet was kind of in stages. I don't know if you just jumped right in and did it. Did you?
What, keto? Yeah, no, not really. Like you, stages. Just sort of stumbled across things bit by bit. You know, played around with the Atkins diet at one point, then the Dukan diet, and came up with my own sort of, had a set of rules that actually fell into the sort of moderate or low carb, and then found out about keto. So it was in sort of various accidental stages, really.
Totally.
More luck than judgment.
Yeah, right?
So talking about your story, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people out there know you already, but for people who don't, perhaps you could tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a pretty cool story. When I was 16 years old, I wasn't feeling well. I had a couple things going on. So I went to the family doctor. I didn't even tell my parents I was going. I just went. And at that office visit, I was told I had PCOS, which is basically type 2 diabetes that affects female fertility. I had acid reflux really bad. So she gave me a medication for that. I was very depressed. So she gave me an antidepressant. I had IBS, so I was given some medication for irritable bowel syndrome. I left that doctor's visit pretty sad and low. She told me that it was nothing I was doing. It was just the cards I was dealt because I had some family members with type 2 diabetes and some issues. But that very same week, I took my dog Tiva to the vet. She was a beautiful golden retriever that was losing patches of her hair. And the first question the vet asked me was, what are you feeding her? And it was like a light bulb went off because I was an athlete. I was one of the best athletes I was just a really big athlete, a really unhealthy athlete. And so that opened up my eyes to, wow, what I put into my mouth can, we're an input output system, like what you put in is what's going to come out. And so I changed my dog's diet first and her hair grew back. And I was like, wow. So I changed my diet and sure enough, the acid reflux went away. The depression went away almost immediately. The weight loss took a long time, but at the time I worked at a coffee shop where I would make the muffins and the scones and the cinnamon rolls. I had free mochas all day. And then whatever didn't sell came home with me in a big old box.
Wow.
And that's what I lived off of. So my life had to change drastically, but I love food. I will always love food. I do not want to eat chicken breast and broccoli. I think it's gross. And so I just started getting in the kitchen and recreating some of my favorite foods. Like, have you tried my protein noodle lasagna?
I haven't, but I've heard about it. In fact, I was just reading about it the other day. It's on the Diet Doctor website as well as in your books, isn't it?
It is. It's on my website. He took it. Okay. It's on my website.
Ah, okay. We'll point people in that direction then.
On my way. That's great. But yeah, that was what I had on my birthday all the time. And I'm like, I'm having this on my birthday. I'm just having it differently. And everybody that even are non-keto, they're like, this is the best lasagna ever. You'd never know there's not noodles in it. But, that kind of just started my journey. And then I wanted to be able to change other people's lives because depression sucks. I mean, I get clients all the time telling me how much weight they lost, and that's great. I'm very proud of them. But when somebody is able to get off antidepressants or I had a teenager come up to me and she said, Maria, if it weren't for you, I'd be institutionalized for my anxiety. That type of stuff, like, oh man, I could almost cry thinking about it because, that's life changing. And so is losing weight. But I mean, that type of stuff, being able to change your life is huge, And some people are changing their lives by losing weight. I had one man who was a father who couldn't even play with his kids. He was 450 pounds and now, he's under 200 and he's like, I'm living now. And that's fantastic, So, but that's basically how it started. I went to school for nutrition and exercise physiology and I just married the two and never looked back.
What were the kind of rules you applied? You said you were quite young, you were 16 and you changed the way you were eating, but how did you know what to do?
Well, there wasn't Google then, that's for sure. I had to kind of look up because I didn't believe my doctor in saying that, it was the cards I was dealt. And so I found out what causes PCOS because that was my biggest thing. I love kids. If you know me and my children, I adore them. And when I was told I probably would never be able to carry my own children, it hit me hard. I looked into what causes PCOS. It's excess androgens. And what is the excess androgens caused by? It's excess carbohydrates, sugar, and caffeine. That's what I lived off of. And nobody wants to hear that. It seems like people will cut the carbohydrates and sugar, but when I say you got to cut the coffee out, they're like, no. Hey, I know I was totally addicted myself. And it probably took me 10 years from learning that to cut it out completely. It's now been about 10 years since I've had it. So, I had to cut those things out, but I just started getting in the kitchen, creating things that I really liked. Was it called keto then? No. Like you said, it was more called the Atkins diet. People are like, what's the difference in Atkins and keto? I'm like, well, if you look at the original Atkins, nothing. If you look at, what the Atkins looks like now, Dr. Atkins would bang his head against the wall saying, what have you done? It's really not that different. So.
And you said it was in stages. So you've mentioned the big things that you cut out, but was it a gradual process? And presumably you carry on changing. I mean, you've moved more and more towards carnivore, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what happened was, I cut out the traditional like breads and pastas and rice. What's interesting, at that young age, I still lived at my parents' house, and when you tell somebody you're cutting out sugar and carbohydrates, the food pushers come out of the woodwork,
Yeah.
And that was my mom. And so I had to lie. And I told, because like family gatherings, like birthdays and Christmas and all that, I lied and said I had a gluten allergy. Like, why isn't Marie eating the bread anymore? Well, guess what? Everybody started making rice stuff because rice is gluten-free. And I was like, yeah, I can't have that either. Because when I did, the acid reflux would come right back. And I'm a real stubborn German girl who peer pressure doesn't really get to me, but I didn't want to be the oddball out. I already was kind of the oddball in many ways. I wanted to be like, I can't because I have like a food allergy. I just can't. And so they didn't really understand what gluten was. And so when I said, well, I can't have rice either, it's too inflammatory or whatever. That's true. Most of these celiac people that I work with, when they cut out the breads and the pastas, then they go to like the gluten-free rice or, the gluten-free pastas made with rice flour or the gluten-free breads made with rice flour. And rice flour has about 50 more calories than white flour. And gosh, it's like 80 more carbohydrates per serving. It's a lot. And so you are still inflaming that gut that's already damaged. And the only way you're going to calm that inflammation down is to cut all that out. I'm really grateful that there wasn't a lot of gluten-free products 23 years ago because that's what people would have made me. But I'm also glad there wasn't a lot of keto products because that's where I would have had trouble because there was something called like Carb Smart ice cream. You probably don't.
I have read up about it. I tell you why. I think it was Carb Smart. I could be wrong. I'd have to check the name. But I think I was approached. I got an email asking if I wanted to promote it. And I went to look at it and I was like, no.
So this was, like I said, stages. The little bit of so-called keto or low carb products out there, they did get my attention, and I mistakenly would get like a tub of this Carb Smart ice cream it was their chocolate with peanut butter swirl in it. And I swear in the middle of the night, it would call my name until it was gone, until it was out of the house. And so thankfully it was just me, in college and stuff. So I could get that stuff out. I met Craig when I was 17 years old. I was married before I was 21. So I was in control of what was in our house, And so I just couldn't have that around because whether you call it a food addiction or whatnot, that's what I wanted. And I think that sugar is powerful brain, chemical signaling going off. So just not having it was a part of my healing. If you brought that to me now, you could have it sitting in front of me all day and I wouldn't touch it just because, like you said, in stages. Now I'm kind of, I'm not 100% carnivore, but I lean towards that way because that's how I feel best. That's where my energy comes from. But things won't tempt you eventually. So no matter where you are in your journey, you need to pat yourself on the back for getting as far as you have and know that making new goals all the time, once you accomplish one, will help just continue on in your journey, make you expand and grow.
Who was that in the background vying for attention? It sounds like a very noisy bird.
It is. I'm sorry.
Is it a wild bird or is it a bird you have?
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of birds out here. There's a hummingbird feeder right here. I heard the flapping. You probably couldn't hear that, but I heard that when I was talking too.
I see pictures. I would love to have hummingbirds. That must just be amazing.
Oh, they are really neat.
I was reading something and I forget what it was. I was amazed that it killed hummingbirds. And I forget for the life of me what it was. But there was some, and it was a surprising, and I can't remember what it was. It was some kind of insect or something, but it would hang around on these bird feeders and it kills hummingbirds.
Oh my God.
I'll look it up later. But yeah, it was really surprising because they're tiny, aren't they?
They are tiny. Oh, I scared them. There's the hummingbird feeder.
Oh, wow, cool.
Well, I'll try to catch it. I'll leave it right here. I'll sit like this.
That's a lovely view. What a fantastic place. Whereabouts in the States are you?
We're in Wisconsin in the summertime, and then we live in Maui in the wintertime.
Yes, bit jealous of that. You're you're the whale whisperer, aren't you?
Oh, you love the whales. And people ask why we don't stay there, but I think Wisconsin's one of the most beautiful places in the summertime. And it's nice because nobody really knows that. The winter keeps the riffraff out. So quiet and woodsy, and yeah.
That sounds like a good combination.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about, I was listening to you talking on a podcast the other day, and it sounds like the process of adoption and your first cookbook were quite interlinked.
Yeah, I didn't tell that story. That was really cool. So I was married at a very young age, and I told Craig about what the doctors told me, that I probably couldn't have my own kids. And he said, you know what, why don't we adopt? And so we never even tried the fertility route. I don't judge people for doing that. Just for us, we just knew there was a ton of children that needed homes. And our pastor that married us was from Ethiopia, because a lot of people ask why we adopted from Ethiopia. And he kind of led us down that path. And knowing the stories of the Ethiopian children, I mean, it was like the best decision we ever made. So we started adopting, and sadly, Craig lost his job. We basically lost our house and our cars.
Wow.
I didn't even have a computer. I went to the library to write. I should say, one of my dearest friends said, Maria, why don't you put your recipes together, like the protein noodle lasagna, right? Why don't you put your recipes together to help raise money for your adoption? And she's like, and start a blog. I was like, what's a blog? This was before blogging, was a thing. And she told me what a blog was, and Craig helped me start it. And I went to the library, and it gave me a reason to wake up. It gave me a reason to ride my bike to the library and write. It gave me something to focus on and be happy about. Never did I thought some local people would buy it, right? We put it on Amazon, and it went gangbusters. And people just were so awesome and supportive. And I didn't have the money to advertise. It was just word of mouth, and it just went crazy. And now it is what it is. And so I'm very grateful for what I have today, because I know it could go away in a second. I saw it. We had a nice house. We had a nice car. I had a BMW, and we lost it all. And I'm grateful for that loss. I really am, because it keeps me grounded. It keeps me just grateful for people like you that asked me to be on your podcast and tell my story. I just have nothing else to say about that except for I'm just grateful, because my heart is I'm just grateful.
I bet. I mean, I can't think of the exact quote, but that whole strength through diversity. I mean, it's true, isn't it? It really makes you appreciate one when you've had the other. Yeah.
And I remember when everything happened, and we were just so upset that the adoption fell through. If you know anything about adoption, when you lose a job, every dollar, every minute of headway you put into that adoption goes away, because our insurance went away. So we had a new insurance, new everything. And so the adoption agencies have to redo everything because everything changed. And so all of that money we put into it went away. And so not only did we lose a job and everything we had, all that money went poof into the air. It was like we put it into a fireplace. And yeah, I was upset. I was mad. And I remember my mom saying, Maria, your babies just weren't born yet. Oh, man. If you know Mike and Kai, if you watch us on our YouTube channel, like, man, those kids are awesome. And she was right. Like, my mom and I butt heads sometimes, but man, what she said in that moment, I'll carry with my whole life.
Yeah.
So we ended up adopting 2 boys. The first baby we were placed with died of malaria soon after we were placed with them.
Wow, that's got to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was just boom, boom, all of these explosions going off. But again, it brought me to the children I have today. And I'm really grateful. Very, very grateful. And then Craig got another job. That's why we were able to finish our adoption. And then once we brought them home, Craig said, you know what? Your business is doing so well. I'm going to be a stay-at-home dad. And I was like, what? Are you kidding? And he's like, I'm serious. We were used to living off of nothing. And he's like, I think we will better serve our children if we keep living this way. And we just focus on, building I consult clients and stuff. So we decided to do that. And he homeschools the boys to this day. They're 9 and 10 now, and he wants to do it forever. So it was all like a, blessing in disguise it really was.
Yeah. Sometimes things need to happen at the right time, don't they?
Yep.
So obviously your boys are a huge part of your life, are the focus of your life, I imagine.
They are. For, the most important of times of their life, they didn't have anybody. So I feel maybe I'm making up for it, but they are a part of, people. I work with a lot of psychologists that, whether it be someone that specializes in depression or family or whatever. And I asked them, I said, how do you feel about family dinners? Because when you do keto, a lot of people start intermittent fasting, right? Or OMAD, 1 meal a day, whatever it is. How important is it for us to eat with our whole family, right? They said, well, the whole idea of eating with your family is to have some sort of time together where you talk about your day. So it doesn't have to be a meal, but oftentimes it's the only time people sit down and talk because they're running to school activities or school in general, sports, athletics, drama, whatever it is, plays, where we're together all the time. We ride bike together. We'll ride bike after this. We take walks. We go fishing. We go swimming. We're together all day. I can see them right now. They're inside. So the fact if we don't have dinner together, I just want people to know you got to do something with your kids. Read with them, play games with them, go for a walk with them. Oftentimes, and this one psychologist really agreed with me, when we're eating, we're concentrating on the food and that type of thing, where if you're actually walking with your kids, the conversation is much better.
Good point.
So I argue that we just need to have more family time. And maybe with this COVID thing, it's good that everybody has to just stop. They're not so busy. Because honestly, people are like, oh man, can't you just not wait until this COVID thing stops? I'm like, well, honestly, I work from home. I live way out in the woods. We already homeschooled our kids. I cut my own hair. I prefer movies at home. I don't like going out to eat at restaurants. So my life really hasn't changed, other than I don't get to see my parents as much or at all, except for on FaceTime and stuff. But other than that, my life really hasn't changed.
And how old were your boys when you adopted them?
Kai was 1.5. I met Kai when he was 4 months old.
Wow, that's a long time to wait.
Yeah, Micah was 1.5 when we met him, and Kai was 4 months. And they said, in Ethiopia's eyes, we were their parents, but the United States wouldn't let us bring them here. They wouldn't give us visas. So they said, you need to go back, because we didn't have visas either. You need to go back, and we'll let you know in 3 or 4 weeks that you can come back and get them. But you just have to wait a month. A month went by, 2 months went by, 3 months went by, 6 months went by, and we had nothing. We were really nervous. Some people thought that we weren't even telling the truth, that we were adopting. I was like, what? Anyway, it was the day before Thanksgiving, we finally got to bring them home. And so here I was trying to be super mom. I had a baby Kai would cry if I ever set him down. So I had to learn to cook with a baby carrier. And Micah, my older one, would get jealous. So I had to hold his hand. So here I was trying to cook Thanksgiving dinner with one hand. It was scary. I mean, I went from being a carefree girl that went kayaking and paddleboarding with the whales. No, not at that time, but I did whatever I wanted to. Here, these two lives, they don't want you to even go to the bathroom without them. So it was like, whoa, boom, here, your mom. And it was scary. And I think it's okay to be like, whoa, that was scary. But man, it was just also the most amazing time of my life. I wish I could do anything to have one more day to hold them real tight as babies, or, as 1 and 3 years old. Because now they're independent, and I get sad. But Craig's like, you know what? You raise them to be strong and independent. If they needed you all the time, You don't want that. You want them to be independent, strong men. And, we did that. So as much as I crave them to want to be rocked by me, I also am grateful that they are strong and independent young men right now.
And was there ever any doubt that you were going to raise them eating keto?
No, I'm not a short order cook. I know where the nutrients are. I know how healthy this lifestyle is. I mean, sure, there's definitely an unhealthy way to do keto. I do think that people are too afraid of protein. And that's when kids fail to thrive on keto, when they're not eating enough protein. What's interesting is when they first came to the United States, we had to do all these tests. And the growth charts, they weren't even registering. They're so little. Like, sure, Kai was over a year old, but he was so tiny. He was like just itty bitty. I could hold him like this. And so was Micah. He was tiny. Now they're on the 90th percentile.
Wow. Yeah, that's a big change.
They're thriving. I fear what they would be like on sugar because they have energy up the wazoo and they like this food. We make gummy bears. You name it. They eat good things. Anything they see their friends have, I'm like, we can make that. And they're like, all right, let's do it. My son Kai loves his superheroes. And he said, Mom, it's Superman's birthday. I said, okay, what should we make him? And so we made, do you know what Ding Dong cupcakes are, or Little Debbie cupcakes?
Are they different from normal cupcakes?
Well, they're cupcakes that you buy in the store, and they have little swirly things on the top.
Okay.
People in the US watching this or listening, they'll under a Little Debbie cupcake. We made those for Superman. They're stuffed with cream in the middle, So we still have, all those types of fun times. I don't feel like they are left out in any way.
I mean, knowing what you eat when you eat keto, like you say, you can make it unhealthy if you want. You can make any form of eating unhealthy if you want to. But I mean, there's nothing weird about it. I don't really understand the fear when it comes to kids eating it.
I know.
I don't understand what the big difference is. I mean, I know there are certain things you have to pay attention to with kids, from, when they're babies to weaning and all the rest of it. And you have to watch salt and you have to do this and you have to do that. But I don't understand what the fear is. It's just food. It's real whole food. I'm not sure where the fear comes from.
I find it interesting that if I fed them Pop-Tarts and cereal and skim milk and all that, I would not be seen as weird. But the fact that they have salmon and eggs for breakfast, I'm a weirdo. It's like they eat nothing out of a package. They don't eat food dye. Like, it's just, yeah, it is what it is. I find it interesting too that if you eliminate meat from your diet, it's not too restrictive, like vegans, right? Or vegetarian. But if I eliminate vegetables from my diet, that's too restrictive. And once you realize where all of these anti-nutrients are from, they're not in meat. They're in vegetables. Oxalates, kidney stones, it's not from the meat. It's from the vegetables.
And usually kids love meat. I mean, I've seen my niece and nephews, and I can remember what I was like when I was young. It's always, the meat is the delicious bit that everyone goes for first.
They just had chicken wings for lunch. I mean, they're lucky kids, right?
Yeah, it's a strange thing. And they seem to be really into the cooking. They like cooking with you and coming up with ideas.
One of them really loves it. He's an extrovert that loves being on camera and stuff. And then I have one that's a little bit more shy. He's more into computers and he's the quieter one. And sometimes he'll want to do the video, like a YouTube video with me, but I don't push it on him because I don't want him to, hate it or anything like that. But once in a while he'll want to be on it and I'm like, yes, let's do it. Right. So yeah, you get a mixture of everything. They're so different personality wise.
And you've highlighted a little bit in a couple of things you said, but you do seem to be the focus of a lot of attention. You seem to often not be able to do it right. You're too thin, Maria. You're too this, you're too that. Is it just because you have a big following? What is it that seems to lead people to have to comment on what's going on in your life?
Oh, yeah. The most recent, with all of the protesting going on and the murder of George Floyd, we've gotten a lot of hateful messages on adopting Black children. And the sad thing is, like I told you, we live in the middle of the woods. We don't really, we homeschool. So they didn't see themselves as different. And I had to seriously talk to them that when you grow up and you are driving a car or whatever, you're going to be treated differently. And they're like, what? Why? I don't. And it was really hard to have to make them grow up in that 1 minute. And the fact that people, I was made fun of when I was twice my size, and I'm made fun of now that I'm small. I just think that people want to knock others down to bring them to their level. It's given me a thicker skin. Do I really care what people think? Yeah, I do. I know that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but it's hard. It's hard to read those hateful things. And it's usually not said with a kind heart. It's usually really mean.
Oh, of course it's not. If they had a kind heart, they wouldn't be saying it. I was listening to somebody talking about this the other day, and they were saying, and I agree, that these kind of comments usually come from some kind of projection from the person who's making it. It's some lack in their lives that they're just trying to take it out on somebody else. And this person who was talking is saying they've seen a real uptick, in current times with COVID, with people being extra stressed, being home a bit more, maybe being on the computer a bit more. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Definitely with COVID and the protests going on, the mean people are ready there to bite you, and they bite you hard. Yeah, it's hard because I do have, I'm grateful that I have a lot of followers on social media, on Instagram and Facebook, but it's to the point where I almost want to give it to somebody to take care of and manage, because then you don't see the mean things. But at the same time, I want to, when someone says, hey, Maria, what type of magnesium and how much for migraines or whatever, I want to be able to give them the right answer. What if that assistant doesn't know, tells them the wrong thing? I want to be able to help people. And so people stop being so mean, right? Because I will be there for you. I just wish the mean people would go away and do something else.
Yeah, and I don't see why they can't really. And to attack you like that about your boys, about what's most important to you, seems particularly cruel. And I can't imagine, as you were describing, having those conversations. Those are the kind of conversations that no parent should have to have.
No, I ended up getting them journals that have locks on them, because I still have mine from I was a little girl. I started journaling, but I wanted them to know I will never read it. Here's a lock. I have an extra key. I'm going to hide it in my room just in case, but I'll never open them, because I do have a lot of, I see it in their personalities. The last few weeks, they are different. They are sadder than usual. They're quieter than usual. And I'm like, when you have those really low moments, just open that journal up, put what you're feeling down, and you don't have to tell me, you don't have to show me, you don't have to, it's just for you. And they didn't really understand. My older one, who's very analytical, didn't understand why he would do such a thing. I was like, because I brought my journal out and I started reading some of the passages, and they were very personal. And it was about, my first kiss. And they were like, wow. I was like, see, I don't even remember that boy's name. It's just, I wrote it down, and I wrote about when Craig asked me to marry him and all of the details. I was like, you forget these details, and writing them down just kind of helps your heart. It just gives, and when you're sad, it just kind of puts it on paper so you can move on with your day,
It's good advice. And I got into the habit of using an online journal a few years back, and I would do it most days. And it was when I was doing some therapy, and I was really committed to this, and I would do a lot of personal work outside the therapy sessions, and a lot of that would go into the journal, insights I had and things like that. And I stopped doing it for one reason or another. But they send me emails every now and then, obviously trying to get me to start doing it again. But they send me, this is what you wrote 3 years ago or whatever it was. And I have to say, some of them, it's nothing interesting at all I've written down. But there was one the other day with this fantastic insight after a therapy session I had, and this insight into a dream I had. And I did some personal therapy work at home, and I wrote it all down in this journal. And it was really interesting. So I really must start doing it again.
Well, that's the thing. Like I told them, I said, it's like when you take a picture, what things look like, but until you look at the details of a photograph, that's what your journal is. It's all of these details of the photograph that you're putting down on paper. So you can remember it when, you're 30 and you're reading this and you're like, yeah, I remember when that happened. I remember when the world started protesting for my rights,
Yeah. And I suppose, like you say, they are cocooned a bit, and having to sit them down and talk about that. But obviously you've got to prepare them. It's your job as a parent is to keep them safe. And like I say, these conversations you shouldn't have to have, but you have to, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, and when we adopted them, we were told that you can't pretend that color doesn't matter, because it does. You just have to teach them to embrace it and be proud of it and being, upstanding citizens, but you can't pretend like color isn't there, because it is. And I found that really interesting.
That must have brought up challenges, obviously, with you both being white and them being black. There isn't that
equality.
I can't think quite of the word, but just the reflection that you would have with your parents being the same color as you. I can just imagine it. There must be all sorts of different challenges. I know people who have mixed race children, and just the added layers of complexity.
Yeah,
it must add.
Layers of complexity is true. I wasn't going to tell you this, but it's all right. We're in the trust tree. When they were younger, my older son is a little bit lighter skinned than my younger one. And they were comparing skin again. And I was like, why are you comparing your skin? And they're like, to see if we're getting lighter. I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, we get lighter as we get older. I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, we'll look like you and daddy. And then grandma and grandpa are lighter than you. I was like, oh man, I can't believe I never told you this. Or we never talked about it, because it just wasn't something we talked about. I was like, oh no, honey, that's your color and you're beautiful. You will always be this color. And, I just brought up a lot of conversations about their adoption and their birth parents. But yeah, they thought they got lighter as they got older, because they thought they were a reflection of us. They knew they were adopted, but they just thought they got lighter. Like humans just got lighter. I
love that logic. Just the innocent, childish logic to that. I can completely see it. It does. It makes sense, doesn't it?
It does, because as we got older, everybody got lighter in our family, and Kai was the youngest one with the darkest skin. And I just thought that was sweet.
And do you have any contact with the birth parents, or is that, and don't feel you have to answer that?
No, that's okay. I met Micah's birth mother, and I have a very sad story to tell him someday.
Oh dear.
I have pictures of her. We cried together. I do not have contact with her. She was from a small tribal town in southern Ethiopia. She doesn't want contact either. Kai was left by a statue. My youngest was left by a statue when he was just born. They found him just a day old, basically dying of starvation. Wow. And when I told him that, he cried, because I don't have pictures. I don't have any information about his birth family and why someone would leave him there. And I tried to explain to him that it was because your birth mom loved you so much that she gave you a second chance. The poverty, the starvation is real there. We had to go to Ethiopia twice. we were able to go to Ethiopia twice. It's a much different life. When we complain we don't have enough this, we don't have enough that, we have plenty, And that's the thing. Some of the most poorest countries, I can't remember where it was, but one of those third world poor countries were found to be the most happiest people in the world because of family,
Yeah, and the social connections and support.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I watched a fantastic film last night. It's called The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. If you want a feel-good movie, it was based, I believe, in Malawi. And it's the story of a boy who basically built a wind turbine that powered a pump to take the water out of the well and water the plants, and he saved the village.
Wow.
This boy who just was so smart and inventive.
Yep.
And with very limited schooling, but just accessed the right information, and just with these smarts, went to the dump and just put these things together and saved his village. It's a lovely story. I think you'd enjoy it.
Awesome. Sounds like something that kids would like to.
It feels like we need some uplifting media to consume at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it is really sad. We've had a couple of family deaths over this COVID experience, and we can't have a funeral. We can't get together with family to hug them. It's a really weird time.
It really is. I read a comment someone made the other day, and they were basically saying it's a time where the way people are, their innate being is being exaggerated, and that either they're more lovely and kind and wonderful,
yep,
or they go the other way, and the meanness and the frustration and the anger comes out. And I think that's true.
Yeah, I do too. I'm very near Minneapolis. That's the closest city to us. It's just a hop across the river. And Minneapolis is where George Floyd was murdered. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of looting in the city. Sadly, most of it was white supremacists going in to make it look like it was people fighting for Black rights. Mm-hmm. But there was a man, there's probably many of them, but one of the men that had his store looted was a man that was Black, and he owned a small little cell phone company, and he lived upstairs. And when people came in to loot and steal and light it on fire, he came down there because they ended up getting trapped inside, and he helped them get out. And they still managed to pick up what they dropped, what they stole from him, and still take it from him. And he's not even angry, because a lot of my friends went to help clean up his store. And he's not even angry because it's helping bring light to what's going on in the world. It's helping eliminate the racism. And if you don't believe that there's racism, man, I should show you all of those mean comments I got from so many people that are obviously very racist. And it's really sad because I didn't realize what a big deal it was. But of course, I'm living in the woods. I don't really see a lot of it.
It's a shame you have
to
see
that?
It at all. I do. I can't see who's making the noise, but I can hear them. Yeah.
Oh, every time I get a little close, he goes away. Anyway.
I get a bit shy.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely believe it, and that's a very touching story. There are lots of stories like that out there. People have big hearts.
Yeah.
Difficult times.
Yeah.
Tell us where people can find you. Find all the things you do, all the cookbooks. How many cookbooks do you have these days?
I have 12 books out there, even more ebooks, self-published ones, but I have thousands and thousands of free recipes on my blog at mariamindbodyhealth.com. thousands and thousands of free ones. And I have a free ebook on Maria Mind Body Health. If you do in the search a corner free, you'll find a free ebook with meal plans and everything. We're doing a lot of giving because everybody's in a hard time right now. So there's a lot of giveaways and stuff there. But I'm also on Instagram at Maria Emmerich or on Facebook, Keto Adapted. Thank you, Daisy.
Fantastic.
Every year I do a wonderful trip to Italy. It's a keto trip to Italy. Do you know about this?
I don't. It sounds great.
A woman contacted me. She's like, "Oh, Maria, your smile. You must teach keto in Italy." I was like, "What, Craig? Some lady wants me to go to Italy." And this was, I'm growing up in north central Wisconsin, I've never been anywhere, especially not out of the country. And I was like, some lady wants me to go to Italy. Like, it was a dream of mine. All my favorite movies take place in Italy. And he's like, respond, see what happens. And so I wrote down my number. It was a Facebook message. She called me. I remember exactly where I stood. And she owns a travel agency, but she does specialized trips. And she wanted me to do the Keto Italy trips. And so I do. Every year we go to Italy. We travel the most beautiful places. I'm not a crier, but man, I suppose I cried twice here. But I cry when I go there because it's just so beautiful. And people are like, "Oh, how do you eat keto in Italy?" They made my flourless chocolate torte. They made spaghetti bolognese with zoodles. They made my eggplant parmesan. They treat us like kings and queens. You would never guess that you weren't eating keto. And I tell everybody, I'm not a judgy person. If you want to have some limoncello or gelato, you go and have it. We don't care. As long as you don't make me have it, I don't care what you have. There's plenty of time for you to go off and do your own thing. But it's just a wonderful trip that I help teach you the proper ways of keto. I love that keto has grown and people are getting healthy, but I also find a lot of misinformation out there. And so it's a real nice, small, intimate trip for about 15 to 20 people. We stay in castles. It's amazing. And so, yeah, we do that every year. And that's at mariamindbodyhealth.com. Or you can message me if you want to come with. But I always miss my kids on trips. I don't miss them there because I'm too busy seeing so many neat things.
Wow, that sounds great. And actually, I know it's the home of pasta and pizza, but like France, where I live, it's really easy to eat keto because, there's a real emphasis on cooking from scratch. Yep. There's a real emphasis on fresh vegetables and the meat and the fish and the cheese. And you can go into any bistro in Paris and get a charcuterie plate or a fromage plate. It's actually pretty easy to eat keto here.
Oh, yeah. Where in France are you?
Southwest is classified as, I always call it a bit more middle. I'm sort of up at the top end of the Southwest, but I'm about halfway between Toulouse and Limoges, if you can picture where they are.
That's like my second favorite trip. My husband and I were able to go there last November. And, oh man, I just love Europe so much. We joke about moving there, but it'd be hard to leave our whole family.
Yeah, it is a bit of a trip, isn't it? But yeah, there are some wonderful places. Paris is one of my favorite cities to wander around. It's a beautiful place to wander.
It is. New place around every corner.
Is there anything else that you wanted me to ask you that I haven't, or that you want to get out there? This is your show. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Okay. This is a question I get often. Well, I get a lot of questions often, but don't chase higher ketones. Higher ketones do not mean better results. My ketones are actually quite low because first, I've been doing it for 23 years. The more you've been doing it, the more efficient your mitochondria are. And if you're an athlete, your ketones will be very low because you're using ketones for energy. Don't get depressed if your ketones aren't high. And if you aren't, most people are doing keto because they want to lose weight. If you're not losing weight, don't add more fat. Don't add more fat. You will read higher ketones, but that just means that your lipolysis, per se, you're not getting into the negative fat flux. If you have a lot of body fat, use that for fuel. Don't use dietary fat for fuel.
Yeah, I always like the way Amy Berger puts that as well. She says it's about restricting the carbohydrates. It's about taking something out of the diet, not adding something to it.
Yeah, we're already living a very high-fat lifestyle. We don't need to add anymore. We're just eliminating the carbohydrate group.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there are exceptions, and I've interviewed people that actually the only way they've lost weight is to use a method like Keto AF, where they actually have a 2-to-1 fat to protein ratio. But I'm very much a kind of finding what works for you. But I agree with you. I do see people posting sometimes, how can I make up my fat macro? How can I add to get to this target, For the sake of it, there's no point.
Right. When you eliminate protein or limit that to really low, that scale will go down a lot, but you're losing muscle mass. You lose it fast. And the only way you can keep it is if you get enough amino acids. And if you don't want to lose your hair on keto, eat that protein. That's all I'll say. Some
people struggle to eat enough protein, but no. I love it. Well, it's been fantastic talking to you today. We've gone off in all sorts of different directions I wasn't necessarily expecting. So thank you for...
I know, Daisy. It was so nice chatting with you. I find like we are kindred spirits in many ways.
Absolutely. And I know how busy you are. So thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to me.
Thank you. Well,
perhaps you could leave us with a top tip.
Oh, I guess what I want to tell people is make little goals. Like for me, when I see when I was in college, I see a college syllabus and I had to complete all of this in one semester, I kind of would freak out. But when I would take one assignment at a time, it was much easier, much more manageable. So instead of seeing the keto diet and like, oh, I got to change all this at once, just accomplish one goal at a time and evolve and make new goals all the time and never look back, only forward steps. I do that with marathons. And when I run marathons, I don't see like, oh my gosh, I have to run 26.2 miles right now. I say, okay, I'm going to run 5 miles. I know I can do that. And then, okay, just do 5 more. And then pretty soon it's over. But like, I think that's my biggest tip is just like always evolve and make new goals and surround yourself with people that are going to support those goals.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
It was so nice chatting with you. I hope to meet again. Maybe in France.
Ah, yes, definitely. Next trip. To get the resources and links from this show, please go to ketowomanpodcast.com/episodes. Please share this podcast with as many people as possible by sharing one of my links or just taking a screenshot of an episode that you enjoyed. Reviews really help raise the profile of the podcast, which gets it in front of more people, but also helps me attract a wide variety of guests. So please take a minute to leave a review on whichever podcast app or platform you like to listen on. It doesn't go unnoticed by me, the people who regularly like, share and comment on my posts. Your support really does mean the world to me. Thank you. Are you enjoying this podcast? Help me make more episodes and videos by making a pledge at my Patreon page, patreon.com/KetoWoman. Or simply hit the support button on the Keto Woman Podcast website. Don't forget to join in the fun on the Keto Woman Podcast Instagram and Facebook pages, and Daisy_Keto Woman on Twitter. Are you my next extraordinary woman? Maybe you've got an idea for a show, a topic you would like to hear about. Let me know how I can tickle your earbuds by dropping me a line at daisy@ketowomanpodcast.com. This week's end quote is from Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. Bye-bye, Keto Lovelies.